Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to 5 to Thrive Live. I'm Karolyn Gazella, and I co-host this show with my good friend, Dr. Lise Ullschuler. I can't tell you how excited I am about our show topic today. We'll be talking about savoring, which is a concept that I have tried to apply to my own wellness plan and my life in general. With me is a longtime colleague and a friend who I truly admire because she is so committed to helping cancer survivors thrive. Conner Middelmann is board certified in holistic nutrition and a certified nutrition professional. She is a long-term cancer survivor, the founder of the online community Savor, and an accomplished chef and author. But before we dive in, I'd like to thank our sponsors, beginning with Cetria, a patented form of glutathione clinically proven to raise blood glutathione levels. Glutathione is the master antioxidant and the body's primary defense against free radicals. It also helps support respiratory health. For more information, visit cetriaglutathione.com. Also, cognizant acetylcholine, which is nature's way of keeping the brain's energy-producing centers firing on all cylinders. If you're looking for a way to enhance your brain function, including memory, focus, and attention, look for Cognizant on the label or go to cognizant.com for more information. ProThrivers Wellness Brain is a product that contains Cognizant as well as other brain-supporting nutrients and herbs. You can find ProThrivers Wellness Brain online at pureformulas.com. There's also ProThrivers Wellness Sleep, which combines higher dose melatonin and other sleep-supporting natural ingredients specifically designed for thrivers. You can find ProThrivers Wellness Sleep also at pureformulas.com. And Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics. It's a best-selling probiotic for more than 30 years, and it contains 12 probiotic strains that are shelf-stable, so no refrigeration is required because of a unique 3-year fermentation process. It's a very effective probiotic. Learn more at drohhiraprobiotics.com. Conner, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's a delight.
Yes, you are doing such great work. So let's start with the basics. What does it mean to savor?
Yes, savoring is something I hadn't really heard about until maybe 2 years ago, and many people haven't either, although it's been well studied in the psychology area since the 1990s. It's a branch of positive psychology. So to put it simply, it is the practice of being mindful and fully present before, during, and after positive experiences, actively noticing and appreciating these experiences. So that's the official definition. I love the way that Dr. Fred Bryant, who kind of came up with this concept, he calls it's like swishing a positive experience around in your mind. It's almost like swishing a good mouthful of wine in your mouth to kind of really enjoy all those aromas. And so it's not the same as pleasure, which is more fleeting. Savoring enhances positive experiences because we slow down to really enjoy them, and that helps us create longer lasting and deeper memories of these good times. So really, we can savor anything that's positive, and that's one of the great things about it is it's so simple. You can just notice something positive, slow down, really enjoy it, and then move on with your day.
I love that swishing a positive experience in your mind. As you know, Conner, I also like a nice good glass of red wine. So that resonates with me.
Yeah.
So why did you become so personally passionate about the concept of savoring?
Yeah. It's funny. I don't generally experience epiphanies, but on my 50th birthday, somebody sent me a poem by Mary Oliver called The Summer Day. And the last 2 lines of that poem are, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" you and many of your listeners have probably come across this. It's quite frequent that you bump into it on Instagram. But I had never heard it before, and it just hit me like a sledgehammer to the head. Because at the time, my life had become anything but precious. It was kind of like a constant chore. I was juggling 100 balls, and I felt frazzled and overwhelmed all the time. And I really had a sense that my life kept accelerating and was actually passing me by. So I decided to slow down. I kind of had to. My health also forced me to, and figure out what really matters to me. And that turned out to be really just two simple things that money can't buy. One is authentic, positive relationships, both in my personal and in my professional life. And the other was just inner peace. I know that sounds kind of weird, but I just couldn't sleep. I was constantly stressed. I had to-do lists as long as both arms. And I just wanted that to stop. I wanted to get off that crazy train. And so I started learning various mindfulness practices. At the time, mindfulness was really becoming quite popular. And that eventually led me to savoring. And what I love about savoring is that whereas mindfulness can be quite austere and frankly a little boring, you just sit there and you're noticing the present moment. It's like mindfulness with a twist where you're noticing the present moment and then you're going, oh, and I'm liking the present moment. I'm going to swish that around in my mind a little longer and really enjoy the present moment. So it's now I've integrated this approach in my work because a lot of my clients have the same crazy busy lifestyles that I used to have. And I increasingly talk with them about savoring their food, but also savoring exercise, exchanges with people, petting, snuggling with your cat. I mean, you can savor pretty much anything. And to my surprise, they're very receptive to it. I sometimes say, yeah, I know this doesn't really seem like a nutrition consultation. And they usually go, no, this is all part of it. And of course it is. So, and in my own life, I'm happy to say I have now really managed to bring these two priorities to my life. Relationships and peace are now increasingly what, provides meaning to my life. And everything else seems much less important than it used to.
That's great. And Elise is a big fan of Mary Oliver, and we have been using that quote in our presentations for years and years and years. So I love that quote, and I love Mary Oliver, obviously. So, okay, well, let's switch over into the science of savoring. What does the research say about the health benefits of savoring?
Yeah, again, it seems kind of woolly, and you would think, oh, how can you possibly research that? But it actually starts with that negativity bias. I'm sure you've heard of it. We come hardwired with a sort of baseline setting of expecting the worst. Humans just focus much more on negative events and emotions than positive ones. And I noticed that just yesterday I was going for my morning hike and I bumped into a person who greeted me warmly and we had a lovely exchange. And then I walked past someone who ignored me and I was much more emotionally invested in why did she not say hello to me and I greeted her than I was in that lovely positive exchange I had minutes earlier. So we kind of notice the negative more, and savoring is kind of an antidote. Of course it's important, and especially during evolution it was very important for humans to be able to notice danger, threats, thunderstorms, fires, predators. But nowadays, especially because we're always so busy, this negative sort of bias really keeps us in a chronic state of stress and prevents us from enjoying the present because we're always in the past or the future, worrying and feeling upset or resentful. And again, we know from a large body of research that when you're in that negative place, you're much more prone to developing anxiety and depression and sleeping badly and just feeling generally frazzled and stressed. So savoring is the opposite of that. It's really an antidote to this distracted way of life because it forces us in a way to slow down and focus intentionally on positive experiences like that smile I exchanged with the woman on the hiking trail. And so it also helps us slow down our perception of time. It's like time passes a bit more slowly, and it just makes our lives feel a lot fuller and richer because we're actually present to our lives. So I won't rattle off a bunch of citations, but I have written a blog post that your listeners are very welcome to go and check out on my website. It's called The Sweet Science of Savoring, just as this show is. And it's really about how this ability to savor can lead to a generally happier life. And for instance, studies have shown that people are generally happier. Children, even who savor, are more self-confident in primary school. People who are open to savoring are also more open to learning. They're less prone to feel depressed or anxious. Interestingly, they've done some studies in cancer caregivers, and even there they found that people who were able to savor were less prone to feeling distressed and stressed. Obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety disorder, you name it, even improved long distance romantic relationships, because when people don't see much of each other, they really savor the times they do have together. So it's just a very beautiful body of research. I had so much fun reading these studies and just going, life can be so sweet if only you slow down and actually notice all the good stuff. Which is why I changed the tagline of my nutrition business to Savor the Good and Savor the Good Life, because there is so much good stuff that we often miss.
Yeah, it's, the mental health benefits and some of the benefits that you've just mentioned are not surprising to me. Are there any studies showing that there are physical health benefits, or is it primarily the mental health, reduced stress, you're just happier, you're more positive? Anything about physical health?
So to my knowledge, not directly, but of course, indirectly, happier people, calmer people also tend to take the time to cook meals and eat them calmly and digest them well. And when you sleep better, you tend to, have a more positive outlook on life. So I think it's more of an indirect relationship than a direct one. But again, we do know, for instance, that chronic stress causes elevated cortisol, and that is then linked with inflammation. So unfortunately, I haven't come across research showing direct physical benefits, and that would definitely be something to explore. I do know that mindfulness practice per se is linked to reduced glucose, blood pressure, cholesterol levels, inflammation. So again, there's a lot of this research is sort of overlapping, and that's, I think, where we're going to see more benefits becoming apparent over time.
Right, and the work that you do and the work that we do, we know that there's such a significant connection between mind and body anyway, and they go hand in hand, really. Okay, what are some practical ways to add savoring into our regular routines?
Yeah, I mean, they're actually quite simple and easy, but sort of many different ways you can do that. But the first step is difficult, which is to slow down. Because if you're rushing, that literally means you can't savor. It's like pressing your accelerator and your brake at the same time. So one of the things I often recommend is, for instance, keep your phone at arm's length. When you get up in the morning, start by savoring your coffee. Start by savoring the bird song that you're hearing through the open window. And another way to kind of slow down is just to schedule yourself carefully so that you don't overschedule yourself, leaving gaps in your day. So you can just check in with yourself every now and then and almost go, oh, is there anything pleasant right now that I could be savoring? Like right now, I'm savoring this conversation, although I'm not as relaxed as I might be if we were having a glass of wine together.
Yeah.
But I think as soon as you can take a little break, and some people actually have a little reminder on their phone that says, hey, take a break, 5 minutes of just breathing and relaxing. And then immediately when you're in that relaxed state, you start noticing all sorts of things that you can appreciate. And then the next step is actually noticing. So again, we see lots of things throughout the day without really noticing them. So just simply paying attention to things like, I don't know, the minty flavor of your dental floss. Or I discovered this winter, I bought a new bathrobe and I was wearing it in the mornings to meditate. And it was unbelievably soft. And I noticed I kept kind of rubbing my fingers over the bathrobe and thinking, oh, this is so lovely. And of course, I was savoring, without really doing it intentionally. Or when I go walking, I used to wear earpods and listen to podcasts. Or are they called earpods? Earbuds, that's right. And then I realized I was really missing out on my walk. So now I leave the headphones at home and I just go for a walk and I hear birds, especially now in springtime. And that's a wonderful way to start. So your physical senses are often the best way to get into savoring, by looking around and seeing things that are pleasing to the eye. In nature, especially now, it could be flowers or insects, but there's, even in the winter, I often think icicles, ice formations can be really cool to look at. And in fact, one of the bits of advice that the savoring researchers give is, if you see something that you think is appealing in some way, take a picture of it, because that deepens the experience further. And then you can even re-experience it later when you look at that picture, or you send it to someone and you say, hey, look at this beautiful flower I saw today. So eyes can be a great way to savor. Another one is hearing, listening, paying attention to sounds, whether it's natural sounds or music. I've noticed that when I listen to music without doing anything else, the music is so much richer than if I'm cooking or, working or something. And that doesn't mean you always have to sit there listening in rapt silence to your music, but just a minute, pay attention to the bass or something like that. And immediately you have a richer experience. Another one I just mentioned, touching, petting your cat, or feeling a lovely fabric, or, the dewy grass under your bare feet. A lot of it is very physical. It's very embodied. So you can use your body as a savoring instrument. But then also having connections with other people, eye contact, smiles, and really noticing how that resonates in your body. I've noticed over time that it seems to activate my heart region. When I have a positive exchange with someone, I feel a sort of slight glow in the region of my heart. So those are just some of the things that you might try. Again, in a second post I put on my blog, I actually have a lot of other suggestions as well. And I think everyone, some people are more visual, others are more sensual or intellectual. So anything's good as long as you're enjoying it.
Yeah, that's great. I just actually got back from a camping trip for my godson's 12th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And we were off grid, no cell coverage, no nothing. And it was lovely, hanging out with my 12-year-old, taking pictures, as you said, hiking with the dogs, right by the river, totally unplugging. I'm going to make a point to do that a lot more often. So these are all great suggestions. Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Mediterranean diet, because Dr. Alschuler and I talk about that a lot. It's one of the most researched diets. You, of course, are known for your Mediterranean cooking and the books that you've written. How does following a Mediterranean diet encourage savoring?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's one of the reasons I decided I really loved working in this way with my clients, is that it has such a focus on enjoyment. Whereas many other diets, even, I don't even want to call it, because it's not really a diet, but many other sort of food systems tend to focus a lot on rules and foods that you're not allowed to eat, or foods that you should be eating all the time. And that, I think, takes a bit of the fun out of it. So having access to, just all foods and really enjoying them without guilt. Again, a lot of us have a lot of guilt and fear of food. And there's even a sort of disordered eating pattern called orthorexia that's becoming more and more common in this country, and generally in industrialized countries, where a lot of people live in fear of food because they think it's going to cause all sorts of health problems, which actually it almost never does, or very rarely. So that's one of the first things. They really celebrate food, and they celebrate life through food. It's an opportunity to connect with other people. In fact, in my first book, Zest for Life, I quoted a wonderful study that was conducted by a team of French sociologists who went around different countries asking people in focus groups, what does healthy food or healthy eating mean to you? And so the American and the British focus groups all said, well, healthy food means getting enough fiber, getting vitamins, getting protein, not eating too many calories. And then when they asked the French, Italian, and Spanish respondents, they said, sharing food with friends and family.
Mhm.
Enjoyment came up like 70 times. Conviviality, pleasure. And there wasn't a single mention of fiber. And that's not to say fiber and vitamins aren't important. Of course they are. And they are a very big part of this Mediterranean eating pattern. But I think this attitude of really enjoying your food and sharing it with others is really what savoring is about in the context of nutrition. And in fact, there's research showing that when we eat food with other people, we secrete a hormone called oxytocin, which is a love hormone. So it's actually, it just lifts your whole mood and sense of happiness and connectedness.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to add one more, because one of the reasons we promote the Mediterranean diet is because it appears to us, and you're right, it's not really a diet; it's a way of life. It's a way of living, a way of eating. It seems that what you mentioned earlier, like all of your senses, the Mediterranean diet is so good at engaging all of your senses. So you're seeing visually, it's beautiful, and the smells and the sights and sounds and everything else. It becomes a very sensual experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that lends itself to savoring.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think even it starts when you're cooking, when you're chopping your fresh oregano or rosemary or garlic or whatever, and all these aromas that are wafting around even before you eat. Again, we know that stimulates all your digestive juices. And so by the time you sit down, your body's already expecting to digest and absorb nutrients. Again, many of us eat in ways that are very rushed and fleeting and often not even sitting down. And so our bodies are not really ready to receive food. So I think this whole process of thinking about what am I going to eat today, preparing that meal, and it can be a very simple meal. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. And then, like you say, eating it. And then sometimes I also teach mindful eating courses where we actually sit down and we notice what flavors, what textures, what colors, what aromas are we picking up from this meal. And it can just make for such a rich experience, ideally without watching television at the same time, because then again, you're multitasking and that it doesn't really work that well.
Yeah.
But actually, one mini plug I'd love to make is on my community Savor. I teach cook along classes where we all cook together and we make these Mediterranean meals together. We're all on Zoom. I send them the recipes beforehand, and then we cook together, and it's absolutely wonderful. First of all, we're all connecting in a really warm and sort of convivial way. But also people will say, oh, I love how the rosemary smells when it hits the olive oil and things like that. So the whole experience can be very, very life-affirming. And I would love to welcome your listeners. It's free. So all you need to do is sign in, and you can find the link on my website. We can talk about that later. But cook along classes are a very fun way to connect with that part of savoring.
I would highly recommend that, because I got to cook alongside Conner when we lived in the same city, which was very special. So if you get to do that with her now over Zoom, I highly recommend it. So let's talk a little bit about your website, because I know that there is a 3-minute meditation, a savoring meditation that you love. So let's start there. Tell us about that and what people can expect when they go to the site and they try to do this meditation. And I have to admit, I was camping, so I didn't get a chance to do the meditation yet, but I'm definitely all signed up and ready to rock and roll there. So tell us about the meditation, and then tell us more about your website.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. So this is actually, the meditation isn't even up yet. So I've recorded it, and I'm going to post it in the next few days. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I still need to do a bit of editing. But it's basically, it's like so many guided meditations that you can find, except it's the only savoring meditation I know of. It's called Savor the Moment, and it's actually based on the work of a woman called Megan McDonough, who I think is a sort of mindfulness teacher. And she turned Savor into an acronym. And I kind of wish I had come up with that, but it's beautiful. And so I just want to make sure I give her the credit. It stands for sense. So sensing, as we talked about, what's going on around you. Appreciate, that's really that positive experience of what you're sensing. Vitalize, which really means how this brings a sense of vitality or aliveness to your body and your mind. O stands for open your heart. So really that's that swishing, that's that lovely enjoying of that sensation, and maybe also wishing that others might be able to have that experience. And then the R stands for rest, allowing yourself to rest in this feeling and letting it resonate a little longer before you go back to your day. And I just love, I do this regularly in my own meditation practice. And it just is such a lovely, rich experience. And at the same time, though, there's a thread. The acronym SAVOR sort of guides you through it, so you're not lost and then thinking about your shopping list. So I'll be posting that very soon to Savor the Community. That's an online community that it's a private membership community, but as I said, it doesn't cost anything to join. And so that's where I share videos. We also interview people, like we recently had a mindful eating expert on, Dr. Michelle May. We've had some researchers on who talked about cancer and insulin resistance. So it's a mix of nutrition science, but also just deliciousness, food, savoring physical activity, managing stress, improving our sleep. I try to support people in these areas because I think they're all just part of living a really rich and fulfilling life.
Yeah, and the website is savorcommunity.com, correct?
Exactly. So when you land there, it'll ask you to sign in. You just put in your name and email address, and then you're in. And if you're brave enough, you can go and introduce yourself in the hello space. But if not, you can just lurk in the shadows for a bit. But I do encourage people to engage, to like things, to comment on things, and to attend some of these events because they're really, really fun. When people come together and support each other.
Yeah, so savorcommunity.com. I highly recommend go and join that community. And then you also do nutritional consulting. So what's that website?
That is, it's a longer one, modernmediterranean.com. But it's all one word, no dots or hyphens. And yeah, that's where you can find out more about my one-on-one nutrition counseling. I also teach group programs for mindful eating. And that's also where I have about 140 recipes that are all based in this Mediterranean way of eating.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great resource. And then the Savor community has a ton of content. So if you are looking for trusted content about really important topics for cancer survivors, I would highly suggest go to savorcommunity.com. Well, this has been great, Conner. Thank you again for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Oh, sorry, one last quick plug. I also teach free webinars at the Boulder Community Health Cancer Center, and you can find the links to that on my website as well.
I remember that.
Yeah,
I have attended one.
Very strong. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
That's great.
So since some of your listeners are cancer survivors or even undergoing treatment right now, that could be another really helpful resource for them.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Well, good. I feel like we can learn so much from cancer survivors like you, especially such talented ones as you. So thank you for the work that you're doing. And thanks again for being on the show. So that wraps up this episode of 5 to Thrive Live. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, ProThrivers Wellness Sleep Formula, Cetria Glutathione, the superior glutathione to support liver and immune health, Cognizant Citicoline to help enhance memory, focus, and attention, and Dr. Ohhira's award-winning shelf-stable probiotic. May you experience joy, laughter, and love, and may you savor every moment. It's time to thrive, everyone. Have a good night.